from the very get-go, Eric and I have been very partnership-minded. We don't really have the bone in our body to tell you it's going to be this way or no way at all. It's more so we're going to shoulder up and we're going to look at the problem together, and we're going to handle the problem together. It's not us versus the person versus the problem. It's us and the person versus the problem.
Through COVID, we learned some skills that created value. We had a ton of projects in the pipeline that were all overnight over budget. And we had to get really, really good at value engineering and finding creative ways that nobody said you could do. Everyone says you have to do it this way, and we had to go come up with a new way and convince everyone to do it. So it built skills of research, thinking of new, different ways. Construction is a very old ways industry, so it was hard. So you also had to get political and figure out how to sell your new idea. And when we won this contracting project, it was like, whoa, we don't know how to run a cash flow model. We don't know how much money this is going to take, but we've made some money and we haven't spent any, so we could probably figure it out. It was kind of one of those things. And it quickly started to look like, man, if things go south, like if we're out here and something bad happens and we've got to make a quick decision to make it right, to stand by our values of having that partnership mindset, it's going to be really hard. We've watched, again, to Ryan's point of seeing so many people do it wrong. We've watched a lot of people get money crunched, and they don't make good decisions because they're in protection mode. And we didn't want to be in that spot. And so I think Ryan stumbled upon y'all and started going through this cash flow model, and it opened up the ability for us to serve our client better, because we did have, it also seems like when you're young, if you're hungry enough to just have the, if my boss tells me to scrub a toilet with a toothbrush, hand me the toothbrush and I'm gonna go do it. Like having that mentality when you're young, the construction industry doesn't see a lot of that. And so they're really quick to give you a lot of responsibility. And so it's a unique
Welcome, everybody, to the next episode of the Construction MF'ers podcast. I am Scott Peper, founder and CEO of Mobilization Funding, and today I'm excited to bring to you two folks from the construction world. We have the founders of Cattlemen Construction, Ryan Blankers and Eric Diaz, who today are going to talk all about the construction world. Their company specifically focuses on QSR and retail, but they have lots of experience on both sides, building large buildings, single tenant, developers. They've worked across the chain, and we're going to talk about all kinds of good aspects of what makes someone successful, what the younger generation can do to get back into this world and what excites them. And of course, how do you go about cash flowing these projects? Ryan, Eric, welcome to the show.
Howdy.
So tell me, how did you guys each get into construction, or you guys meet yourselves?
I'll go first.
Back in about 2018, Eric and I were working on a little over a $500 million development here in Fort Worth. It's the Dickies Arena here. Eric was kind of on the field side in the superintendent role, and I was running down the project management path, and we just had a lot of synergy. We had a lot of common interests and common goals, and we worked well with each other. There was a lot of we both have a burning desire to do a good job, and it was recognized by both of us. So I would go out of my way to try to work with Eric specifically and help him on certain field tasks, or kind of take over the project management, PA, project control role for him while he went out there and just built stuff. And then we kept up with each other there for a while. Eric moved on to a real estate developer where he took on a director of construction role. And I was still at that large general contractor doing $100+ million jobs. And Eric gave me a call one day, and we went out to lunch, and he said, man, we really we really have a growing team. We have a heck of a culture, and I think you'd be a good fit over here. Do you want to come over? And so I did, and I went and saw the real estate side of things. And over the next few years thereafter, we built probably over $150 million collectively worth of real estate projects throughout the nation, primarily focused on the QSR convenience store projects, the triple net deals. And we did a couple offices, one of them being an $8 million, 30,000 square foot office in Fort Worth, which was that was a good one to kind of throw into the mix. And then shortly thereafter, we decided to go off on our own and offer these fractional services and more of a partnership construction manager role to clients that we knew about or that we already had relationships with.
And what about you, Eric?
Yeah, we really, I mean, it was kind of an easy decision to start the company because we had worked together for so many years. And I mean, we were leading a men's group through church together. Like we were going on trips to get, like my wife and Ryan's fiance are friends. Like we really knew each other at the core level. And so when we had started an LLC just to go, we knew we wanted to be involved in something together. And so we were going to go buy and flip houses on the side. And quickly, I think God kind of threw us a curveball, and it was like, hey, you're either going to go find a job or you're going to go full in on this. And I mean, we talked about it, prayed about it, went home, came back the next week, and we're like, we're going on this, and we feel called and assigned to do it. And it's been hard, but like you said, it's been really cool to do it with your best friend, and to we had a lot of people try to talk us out of it. They said, "Oh, you're gonna have a business partner? I don't know. I heard about this guy that got screwed by his partner." Or, "Ooh, why don't you just go work somewhere right now? The economy's kind of tough." Or, I mean, we heard it all. Somebody I really looked up to, the first thing he told me was that it was a bad idea because it was risky. But we just felt confidence in each other and in our assignment. And so transparently, we didn't know what we were going to do. We knew what we knew how to do, and we knew different ways that we could help folks, but we just felt like if we go out there and offer genuine help with the right mindset, that people are going to keep calling. And so that's kind of where those two verticals developed, the contracting and the consulting, because we're primarily a consultant, but we have certain clients who come to us and say, "I need you to actually go build it," and that's where we wind up in that at-risk role. But we still kind of just.
How did you guys land on the consultant side and construction? So thinking like, let's say there's developers listening to this conversation, right? And they have a set of problems, and they have a set of stresses, and they have a set of things they worry about continually on any endeavor they go into for their project, right? Creating their entity, they got a site. Where do you guys come in, and what problems are you solving for them? So like, if they were listening to this right now, they'd be like, wow, that's a differentiator. That's a separator.
I think the one that they love is, historically, we have saved our clients way more money than they have spent on us. So a lot of developers think if I hire a CM, it's going to be this huge burden to my bottom line, and it's this extra luxury of management on my project. Whereas I think we saw some value of having worked for the developer and understanding the deal side and the pro forma. Like, we know that there's not room in the deal to do that. And so through COVID, kind of a long-winded answer, through COVID, we learned some skills that created value. We had a ton of projects in the pipeline that were all overnight over budget, and we had to get really, really good at value engineering and finding creative ways that nobody said you could do. Everyone says you have to do it this way, and we had to go come up with a new way and convince everyone to do it. So it built skills of research, thinking of new, different ways. Construction is a very old ways industry, so it was hard. So you also had to get political and figure out how to sell your new idea, and all the while make it benefit everyone. And so I think when we got out and we saw this consultant role, we're like, man, there are so many construction managers out there who are reporting. They get a report from the contractor, they forward it on to their client, and they say, here's some stuff that I griped at the contractor about to make me look good. And we were like, man, what if someone comes in and actually has a developer mindset and says, hey, I understand risk tolerance. If you want to delete the rebar out of your parking lot and go to fiber mesh, I can save you $30,000. But here's the risk. And it's like, it's business decisions and having the willingness, I think, to, like Ryan mentioned at the very beginning, just want to do a good job. We don't just want to do a job, but we want to actually help get a deal done or fix a deal that's struggling. And so that value engineering role has been a specialization, I think, for us, honed through COVID. And then it really grew that same skill on the construction management side of just not taking no for an answer and thinking outside the box and getting the team together to figure it out.
I love that. How do you guys decide? So like if you were thinking about your customer and you're really coming up with your value proposition to them, when was it that you landed on, oh, you know what? Like these are the areas to focus on, which you've now honed in. When do you present those to them? How do they know that you're different? Like where in the cycle of trying to find a new customer or existing customer do you illustrate that? And how do you do it?
It usually comes through leading questions. As I mentioned before, Eric and I have been part of a good number of deals in our lifetime at this point, and a large number of those have been extraordinarily difficult to operate through. And it'd be naive of us to think that everybody else is doing it 100% perfect. And so we basically just bring up all of the gripes or the issues that we've had in the past, and we present them a way of how we have either A, handled it in the past, or how we B, have figured out how to handle it better in the future. Both of which usually come at a low risk or high return reward to the client. And it helps. It helps to kind of set that hook. And then, from the very get-go, Eric and I have been very partnership minded. We don't really have the bone in our body to tell you it's going to be this way or no way at all. It's more so we're going to shoulder up and we're going to look at the problem together and we're going to handle the problem together. It's not us versus the person versus the problem. It's us and the person versus the problem. And I think that partnership mindset is really what kind of sets the hook and gets them in the boat. Is these deals that people are putting together are inherently risky. And so when you can diversify risk with a partner mind that wants to give you their time, that wants to help you, that is aligned with your pro forma and your core values, it seems to set the deal apart. And there's a special synergy around it after that. And then we get the call back, hopefully.
Yeah, that's awesome, man. I think you're spot on and 100% agree with you. That's the real key, is trying to find alignment in all aspects, not just for you and not just for you and your customer, but also for the outcome of the ultimate eventual, in this case, your customer's customer or the ultimate tenant, right? One of the key differentiators, we were talking about, the mobilization funding business and the grind of it over the years, but one of the biggest shifts that made the greatest impact was when we realized that it's not just about us, it's about our customer. That was one, but that was basic. Like you kind of there in the beginning, hopefully. But the real shift was, you know what, we have to care about your customer too. Even if our potential client didn't, you got to care about the project the client, our client, the borrower, and the ultimate outcome, because that's where the flow of everything is going to be stemmed from. And how can you make that project better? How can you make your customer happier? Even if they're not thinking about it, you're presenting ways to do it. It bleeds down to everyone. And I think the fact that you guys recognize that and bring it up, couple that with your experience being on both sides, being in the other, it becomes inherent. But it's not obvious when you're starting in one spot and you're trying to climb that tree yourself. You don't realize it, But I think it's super smart, impactful that you guys did that. So tell me, where did you start running into problems? So you get together, you're running together, all of a sudden, and maybe not it's a problem, maybe it's just a stress or an obstacle, that you bump into, which ultimately you started to solve those. Where were the pain points originally on the journey?
I think there's been a lot of pain points just in being entrepreneurs. You realize something else gets a tax that you didn't know about, or it's usually taxes, it seems like, but but I think that we were almost 100% consulting, which is awesome when you're two partners because it's just income. We were really low overhead, really lean. And then when we won this contracting project, it was like, whoa, we don't know how to run a cash flow model. We don't know how much money this is going to take, but we've made some money and we haven't spent any, so we could probably figure it out. It was kind of one of those things. And it quickly started to look like, man, if things go south, like if we're out here and something bad happens and we've got to make a quick decision to make it right, to stand by our values of having that partnership mindset, it's going to be really hard. We've watched, again, to Ryan's point of seeing so many people do it wrong. We've watched a lot of people get money crunched, and they don't make good decisions because they're in protection mode. And we didn't want to be in that spot. And so I think Ryan stumbled upon y'all and started going through this cash flow model, and it opened up the ability for us to serve our client better, because we did have a lot of issues on that project, and not necessarily preventable ones, but we ran into a lot of problems and they costed money and time. And because we had this tool, like, that was the pain point, to answer your question. The pain point was this worry of this future crunch and this uneducatedness of how the cash flow worked to, really just protect ourselves and our families at that point. And so, having some finding capital when you're new in business is difficult as well. And then finding someone who doesn't care so much about that, but understands the construction contract and can help work with you to go execute it, that was a huge pain point, and then a huge problem found, or solution found to our problem.
That's interesting. I mean, the cash flow, and it's hard because until you live it, you don't realize how difficult the cash flow cycle is. And because you're in construction, you just think it's hard, right? Like, it's just hard. Construction's hard. Cash flow is hard all by itself. Construction, I can tell you, is the most difficult cash flow cycle probably of any industry. And so the fact that you have like huge numbers, right? You're not moving little widgets around, right? So it's not like you use a credit card and wait. There's just less access to capital because of a larger dollar amounts, which creates more risk, which creates more performance risk, which creates less that you can control yourself. You have weather, you have other trades, you have just other factors, government, regulatory, all the things. Just not every industry deals with that, a volume of variables that you can't necessarily control, or you have to minimize your ability to control them as best you can. And so I think it's fascinating, but it's like it's why I say all the time, like, really the construction world is probably some of the most resilient people. They just never give themselves enough grace to understand that you're actually playing in a game that is inherently harder. I mean, definitely, for sure. I mean, we were talking about corporate America. I've been in some of the fanciest, finance suites with some smart people whipping around spreadsheets, but until you have to apply it, and you don't have access to capital, like that's where your resiliency and perseverance comes into play. And let alone you're outside, because you still have all the employees, you still have all the relationships, you still have inventory, you still have suppliers, you still have vendors, you have theft. I mean, you still have all the other parameters that could occur. So it's funny because it's very much parallel. But I think to your point, you guys asked me that earlier, I think having that med device background and my dad understanding construction and somehow marrying the two. But then it wasn't until, thousands of different opportunities with folks like yourselves where we've actually been through the projects and seen the problems and bumped around and banged our head, that we even knew what to do or how to really make it right. Yeah, we knew what problem we were trying to solve, but it's funny how you guys correlate that because it's really accurate. But how did you end up finding us in mobilization funding, or how did you find the cash flow tool?
Scott, I actually met you in November of 2022 at a getting paid in construction event here in the Dallas area.
The one with
We
Garrett during the hurricane?
Yes, sir.
Oh,
Yes,
yeah,
sir.
or the tornado, I guess it was.
Yep.
That's
Right
awesome.
before that, I came in with my wet hair and my wet shirt from all that rain. But yeah, man, it was you were leading a panel of folks basically discussing the pain points of money changing hands throughout
Mhm.
the development's life cycle. And it was quite eye-opening too, the way that you picked the panel and the way that you conducted the interview questions, because you allowed all different facets of the folks to speak. I mean, you had the developer there, you had the general contractor there, you had the subcontractor there, and you had the banker there, and how they all decided when to release money or to spend money, and what the igniter was or the fire extinguisher was of when to start or stop that money flow. I mean, it was the start of us understanding the complexities of cash flow and how to start opening doors faster, and what levers you might actually be able to pull by having access to capital. We mentioned it earlier, like there are times where contractors are just scared to get their cash, and so they put in a little bit of extra risk money in there. And so if you're able to alleviate somebody's worry about getting paid, and it just ends up helping the entire health of the project in general. It creates synergy, not necessarily conflict.
Yeah, it's funny that event, I love doing that event. It was one of the first ones we've ever done. I think it might have been the first or second like ever live event we did. And Garrett and I had met, and we put a great panel together. But what I thought was so funny that you just hit on it out of that, it was like you that that panel and the audience cut through all the bullshit in like 1 second. Like as soon as everyone's in front of each other. Do you remember when the banker was like, we just want to get the money out, man. Once we close this loan, we want to get the money out. And the whole room took like this audible pause. It was like, like I knew it, and then the
Yeah.
GC was like, whoa, wait a minute, guys. Like, we got to aggregate these. And then he's like, looked at the banker and he's like, tell me, like, what does it take for you to issue it though? If we submit it? And then he started going through the process, and then everyone started, you see the temperature in the room just start to quiet down. And then
Yep.
it was just a riot. And then you had, the developer on the panel was just funny too, because he had a different set of capital. He's trying to get it out and actually could, right? And then the supplier, and then we had the accountant. And it was just funny listening to them go through, but we sorted through the BS quickly, and where we landed. And I hope maybe this is one of the takeaways you had was everybody's got to really do their part, and you got to have your pay apps tight, because even the smallest scope of work that screws something up can make it difficult for the whole channel. And the GCs aren't actually sitting there holding money, and the subs are realizing that's not the case. I mean, certainly there's bad GCs and subs that hold money, right? But that was clearly not that's not the norm.
Right.
And it just was a great way to bring it out. That and change orders. Then we tackled change orders after that. I was glad to get out of there unscathed and get to a margarita after that. But it was great. We need to do another one in Dallas. Actually, we haven't been back there to do one since.
We'd love to have you back. It was
So
a
that'd be
blast.
good. Well, you
We'll
know
show
what?
you
If
where the good margaritas are at afterwards too.
yeah, if you guys want to help me spearhead it, I'd be happy to do that. I'm sure we can put the gang back together and put as many people in that room as we can.
Yeah, man.
Yeah.
It would be fun to do a lessons learned and see where the takeaways ended up leading from that conversation almost 2 years ago now.
Yeah.
Yeah, because I mean, it was eye-opening. It seemed like to add on to your points of the takeaways, it seemed like it all gets solved with communication. Like you had some folks just ask, "Hey, what are your requirements?" And for whatever reason, the GC was like, "Oh yeah, here is all my requirements," and you just follow those simple steps. You set a process and execute on the process, and money moves freely. It was eye opening. It was really fun. I'd be
Nice.
happy to be a part of that again.
All right. Well, I'll take you guys up on it because it's on our list to do in 2025. I it's those misconceptions that people are afraid to ask. So you think, this is a stupid question, I won't ask. But the reality is, like in your example there, the general contractor just wants to tell you, here's the pieces. And by the way, I'm thank you for asking. It'd be great if you just followed this process. Instead, the one person doesn't want to ask because they think it's a bad question. The other one wants them to ask but doesn't want to project. And so that's one of the things I've always tried to do, even with this podcast or anything, is just sort of sort through that, because I kind of sit in the middle and see both sides
Mm.
and just sort through those misconceptions.
Mm.
Oh, that's awesome. So tell me what's next for you guys. What do you see in the construction world? Where do you see some of the pain points? What's next in the cycle? You guys are in an interesting spot. Single tenant development is definitely been impacted by the macroeconomic factors. Certain geographies more than others. Yours is still very, very live and well. But if you're in other markets, rates and developers rates have definitely impacted the world that you guys live in from a developer side. Where do you see the market going? What do you see things next? If folks are listening to this and they're trying to prepare, what's good advice you could give?
I think a common issue we're seeing right now is a lot of people did well easily the last several years and got some confidence. And we've, for lack of a better term, wasted a lot of time working on deals with folks who maybe just had it easy for a few years and then they decided I'm going to go be a developer and they missed the budget by 50%.
Mhm.
And then you've got, an engineer, an architect, a real estate agent. You've got a bunch of different people tied up and a lot of money tied up in it, and it's all for naught. So I think a pain point right now is non-starting deals and people not knowing how to fix the financial crunch to get it to start. The general contractors are only going to do it for so cheap. They've got to cover their risk and their time, same for every other party, the engineer, et cetera. And so, and the bank and everybody's a little more worried about risk right now. So everybody's got some risk money in it. So it seems like the biggest pain point is financial, but it's not a point. It's a swollen cross divisional issue across different pieces of the deal. So I think where we see things going is we see a lot of CapEx being used. We see a lot of existing properties being repurposed so you don't have to pay for a whole new building and parking lot. Maybe you're just reworking something that's there. And then to that point, Ryan and I probably see an article every day of some other big box that's shutting down X thousands of locations, which I think can sound concerning, but it's also encouraging because we know a lot of smart people that know how to get creative with money and look at that now empty space and turn it into something with CapEx. So that's kind of what we're seeing right now. I think there's still a lot of triple net build to suit being done, but it's staggeringly less in volume than the years we've seen past.
Yeah. I have a friend in the world. He said he loves these time periods. Now he's been in the business for almost 30 years and he loved '08. And he says it's a cleansing, man. He gets all the players out that aren't really players. And he goes,
Mhm.
you just chill for 3 or 4 years, and then you got a great 4 or 5 year run after that. And he's been talking about that for 4 years now. So I think he's probably ready. But that was the first thing he said, man, when all this stuff comes about.
Yeah. It's also times like these where you have to get kind of creative and and analyze deals with a little bit more due diligence, get the right partners, the right trades, the right folks in there that can figure out what the MVP of the project is and execute on that minimum viable product. To to get it up to code, to get it cash flowing, to get it whatever. Just define the goal and execute on the goal and figure out what that pathway is. And we've had success of working with folks as of late, matter of fact, on defining that MVP and executing on it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's like the days of hey, I'm gonna shove a set of plans through Plan Grid and just get 100 sub bids, and then I'm gonna pick the low ones and send a bid off. Those guys aren't winning work, and the guys that are just pulling the online bids aren't winning work because, to Ryan's point, there's not enough due diligence. The deals require a knowledgeable person or team to sit down and find the things that don't need money spent on, or else, I mean, deals are just too tight to not spend that pre-con due diligence time right now. So it seems like folks are having some success that are able to work in that piece of the deal, rather than a lot of the folks that we've hired who just say the number is what the number is, and if you don't like it, go hire someone else.
I agree with you. And that's the easiest way to sort out who you want to work with or not either. And you just have to have abundance mentality to know that's a gift being given to you to figure that out, not a pain point. And you just got to move past it and keep rolling.
I like
love
that.
that. One more question for you guys about, so the younger generation isn't just running into the construction world anymore, right? And I think there's a lot of misconceptions about what they may perceive the construction industry and world and the opportunities within it are. If you were talking to a group of high schoolers right now or college graduates, and they were trying to figure out what they wanted to do in this world, what would be the points you would make to draw them into the construction world?
A great question.
Yeah.
It's I think it's a common misconception that the construction world is a maybe bad is probably not the right word, but a bad place to work. But it's great. It's really, really fun. It's fast paced. It's problem solving. You get to establish relationships with people, very, very deep rooted relationships. It's not an industry for the faint of the heart either. You got to be willing to grit down and exercise resilience and execute on projects. It's fun to be in the trenches with people and figuring out problems. And I would say that if you are if you're a chronic problem solver, if maybe reading and all that other like the math and all that was really, really fun for you, and you liked the long drawn out questions of if this variable, like you have to figure out all the variables and then figure out the answer. This is a great industry for you. It's just, man, it's just the problem solve. It's the chase, the adrenaline of working through issues with multiple different constraints, with multiple different vendors or parties that have a ton of different regulations and specifications, requirements that you just have to gain some experience, and then you get to go execute it on. It's fun. It's rewarding.
Yeah. It also seems like when you're young, if you're hungry enough to just have if my boss tells me to scrub a toilet with a toothbrush, hand me the toothbrush and I'm going to go do it. Like, having that mentality when you're young, the construction industry doesn't see a lot of that. And so they're really quick to give you a lot of responsibility. And so it's a unique industry where you could be running $100 million of work at 24 or 25 years old because you're just giving it enough heart and you've got layers of someone to trust that can manage you and protect you. But it's an industry where you're given a ton of responsibility if you take it. And I mean, you can learn how to run a business. You can learn how to manage cash flow and contracts and relationships and negotiations and owners and architects. And so I think it's fun to get to solve the problems, and it's fun to get to be trusted. It's fun to get to be entrusted as a solution for someone, and not just, I'm not just selling you a widget, like I'm selling you help and peace of mind. So I think that piece is really fun too.
I love that. I think you're right. I think there's more opportunity within the construction industry. You can enter anywhere you want. You can enter, in the most skilled positions, at all different types of size businesses. You can create and start. You can enter in a lower skilled position and climb to high skilled positions because the training and education that's involved and the experience and the information that's around you and the layers of management and supervision. There's just so much opportunity to go from. You can go to a trade school and be an apprentice. I mean, you can't enter, like, just name another industry you could enter at all those different spots and levels. I mean, you can go off and get experience, then go back to school, get all the fanciest of education you like, and then enter in a billion-dollar construction company in the C-suite, right? You're never on a job site again, but the job site experience you had was invaluable. I just think it's the coolest place to grow and learn and develop, no matter where you want to go, leave and enter, and move up. And I don't think it's talked about like that. I think everybody thinks you like start off in some ditch with a shovel, like I did when I was I was the gopher boy on a project, and they're like, what's a gopher boy? I was like, go for that, go back to the truck for that, go for that. They're not going to get, I was just up and down stairs chasing tools, and so, but you learn that. And then like you said, if you're just willing to do anything, they'll move you up so fast and way faster than you can in any, what you think is some fancy corporate job. It's so true. So I love that, man. I think you guys nailed that. All right, I'm going to go through 5 quick questions with you, like we call like our little lightning round, and see what you guys, just tell me the first thought that comes to your head. All right. First question is, what's the best advice you ever received on a construction site?
Document everything.
I love it. What's your
Yeah.
go-to safety tip for newbies?
If you work at a company that has a safety guy, bring him in on stuff. Like, take the partnership mentality, because he usually doesn't want to be your enemy. So if you work, a lot of smaller companies don't have a full-time safety guy, but if you do, if you're out on a project that has one, don't try to hide from him, but bring him out there and say, hey, here's what I need to get accomplished. Help me figure out a plan that does that and protects the guys.
I love it. What do you think is the most underrated skill in the industry that someone could possess?
Not taking no for an answer.
Yeah.
I think most of our headaches come from someone who calls the city and says, can I do this? And the city says no. And they hang up the phone, and then they call you and say, hey, we can't do it.
The
And it's
city
like,
said no.
the city said no. Okay, well, what did you tell them to try to change their mind? So I think having some blind confidence to go push back on things and ask questions instead of reporting answers is a skill that we are in need of.
That's funny. My dad had me when I was working with him. I was in high school and he had me do something similar. It was like, go down and get this done, right? And I went down there and I had a conversation, and he goes, you can't do that. And I turned around, went up and told my dad, yeah, he said he can't do that. He goes, I didn't ask you to go down there to be a ventriloquist for them. I go down there and get it done, like find a way to make it happen, and then don't come back till you do. It was like 3 days later, I finally came back with like the courage of like, okay, I finally got to pass the first level, but it was such an eye-opening experience that you, like you said, like you don't need to just regurgitate it. Who's they? Who are they? Did you ask the right question? I mean, there's so much to learn, but yeah, that's a great trait. That's good for anything, by the way. That's
Very
good
true.
relationship advice.
Yeah. It's-
Yeah.
Well, guys, how do people find you? So they've like listened, had a great conversation. Like, I'm going to give these guys a crack. Where's the best place to go find you guys? Where do you like to live online, or your website? What's the best way?
LinkedIn's probably the easiest way. Cattlemen, MEN, Construction Services, and then we're also at cattlemenllc.com. They can shoot an email to Ryan or I, or info@cattlemencs.com. But those are kind of the two spots that we live on the interwebs, would be LinkedIn and our website.
I love it. That's awesome. We'll put all your stuff in the show notes too, so everybody can click the links below. Eric and Ryan, I appreciate you guys joining us, man, today. Thank you very much. I think this is a cool conversation. I think people get a lot of perspective off of where to enter, how to grow within the construction industry, when to branch out, and be an entrepreneur in the world if you want to. And I just love how you guys have carved your niche and how you're adding value across the entire chain for everybody. So thank you for being willing to come on and share your story and your experiences.
Appreciate you, Scott.
Yeah.
Welcome.
And thanks back to you for your team that's been really personable, and there's been a clear, good culture across your whole team. And they talk about it too, which doesn't go unnoticed, but everybody's been really partnership minded with us in return. And so we thank you again for that as well.
Well, I appreciate that. It means a lot. We do our best to try to make it that way. And it's good to hear, at the end of the day, you never know unless someone tells you, but I appreciate you guys saying that. Thank you very much. It means a lot.
Yeah. Thanks a bunch.
All right. Well, everybody, that has been a wrap for us. Please, if you found any of this information valuable, share the show, let people know about it, share the episode. You can find us all on LinkedIn. I'll put our links in the show notes. And until next time, God bless you. Have a great week.